So the roller coaster happens every day. It's not just like over the year you have ups and downs. It's literally every single day you have ups and downs.
Welcome to the Freedom Point Real Estate Podcast, where we talk about creating more time freedom through passive real estate investing. Passive investing in real estate challenges conventional investment wisdom. We are passionate about learning and sharing resources with others who are ready to transform their investing mindset. Quick disclaimer as always, I am not a CPA, I am not an attorney or a financial advisor. This is not financial advice, not telling you or anyone else what to do. The views and opinions expressed in these podcasts are provided for education and informational purposes only and are not necessarily the views of my employer, ADP. I'm glad you're here. Now let's dig in. All right, welcome back, Freedom Point Podcast listeners. Thank you again for jumping into another episode of the Freedom Point. I am your host, Jeremy Dyer, and today I have a wonderful guest, Nicole Fiore. Nicole, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you very much. Nice to be here. We had a little chat before, a little special guest talking about the realities of working from home.
Yes, Nicole's son came on camera just a few moments ago, so was able to meet the little youngster there, and I couldn't help but notice that he had what looked to be some paint all over his face.
Yeah, I think that was makeup.
Makeup, perfect. Yeah, so doing a little bit of arts and crafts today in the Fiore household. So
Exactly.
that's great. And Nicole, you're coming to us from New Brunswick, Ontario.
Yep. No, New Brunswick, Canada.
Canada. Thank you. Yes, I got both provinces mixed up.
I know, because we lived in Ontario before, so I told you I was in Moncton, Ontario, but no, I'm in Moncton, New Brunswick.
That's great. That's great. Well, Nicole is the co-founder of Coast to Coast Homes, Canada. She began her real estate investing journey after attending a transformative weekend workshop. Together with her husband, Colin, they built a company that prioritized learning, networking, and acquiring a team, leading them to acquire their first property. So interested to dive into those details. Colin and Nicole provide quality housing and profitable opportunities to investors. Their confidence, ongoing education, and adaptability drive their success in the dynamic real estate industry. So that's quite a mouthful there. So maybe you can kind of help unpack a little bit more about, kind of your journey and what got you to this point.
Hi. Special guest again.
Sponsor.
Hey, buddy.
He did his makeup.
Yes, looks good. Yes, you added some makeup. Thank you very much. All right.
For the listening audience, Nicole,
that was my son, my 5-year-old. He really just can't help himself. If I've told him not to come down, he cannot help himself. It's better for me to just disappear, and then he can just realize that I'm, and then get into something that I'll have to clean up later. But yeah, so that was him. The reality. So yeah, so our real estate investing journey started before kids, but not long before kids. We joined a weekend workshop. Actually, I joined a weekend workshop where, we were living in Vancouver at the time, and I had my day to myself, and I heard on the radio that a very popular HGTV host was hosting a free event. And so I went and, kind of heard a little bit, and I thought, I could do that. We could do that. And it kind of the rest just continued on from there. Colin joined me for some education. We decided we would join this membership program, which got us a network and got us some conferences, and basically just introduced us to the whole world of what real estate investing is, right? I think as people, before you're an investor, you just think that if you're in real estate, you're a realtor or you're a property manager or like a landlord. I don't even know if I knew what a property manager was. Dealing with toilets, right? And very quickly in our education, we realized that there's a lot more to it. There are so many different avenues. There's lots of ways to, work with partners and work with other people and expand that way. And you don't always have to have like you don't always have to have your own money. Like you can do this even if you are sitting at home and maybe like us, we were renters, we didn't own a thing. Like we didn't have necessarily the ability to, like do our own renovations. Like everyone's got a bit of, the ability to do sweat equity, but we weren't contractors, we weren't carpenters or, none of that stuff. We lived in Vancouver. We paid a high amount of rent. We weren't going to buy anything in Vancouver because it's a very expensive place to live. And we kind of figured it out from there. So the first thing we did was actually just do private lending ourselves. So I'm Canadian, and in Canada we have RRSPs, which is Registered Retirement Savings Plan, which is similar to your IRAs and 401ks, I think.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. And so we just decided to instead of going through like a traditional bank, we decided to do what's called self-directed investing. And so we decided to invest in, like larger land development, some syndications, and then we even did some smaller loans to individual people who were doing, like small renovations, putting in basement suites and stuff like that. And so when we started, we weren't doing all the things. We were just using whatever money we could find and putting it into a real estate vehicle in order to start saving for our future. And that's where we learned all of these processes. It was later when we decided that we were going to do it for ourselves as well.
Sure. So where are you at today as far as like real estate ownership? What are you actively, involved with, on the real estate front?
Okay, so we went from not doing anything ourselves to now. So that was in we started late 2016, and now here 7 years later, I think we own just over we manage, right, assets under management, roughly 30 properties here in Moncton, which includes a few apartment buildings, and then so smaller multis like duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes. We have a 32 unit that is just about purchased. It's literally in the last few hours of trying to get that done. We think it's just going to end up happening on Monday. And then we have land development in Victoria, British Columbia, and land development in Nova Scotia, here, like on this side of the country, where we've built around 9 or 10 homes that we've sold. So we've done flips, we've done long-term buy and holds, we've done multifamily, we're doing land development. We've kind of done it all at this point. Over the course of these last it's been mostly the last 3 years that we've done all that. And now, we're at the point where we want to focus on a few things.
Yeah, you've got a lot going on. It's interesting to hear, your journey, which really isn't all that long of a journey, right? It kind of got started not all that long ago, attending a conference, right?
Right.
Watching an HGTV, channel about real estate and home flipping and that kind of thing, which kind of gets the mind churning, right? And gets kind of excited about learning more. And so you've done just that. And in such a short period of time, I mean, you've owned apartments, duplexes, you've flipped houses, you've owned land, right? And kind of like from co to co, from a Canada perspective, right, or a country perspective. So that's pretty remarkable that you've done that so quick. What would you say is kind of the main genesis behind, why you were really so risk, tolerant, so to speak, to just kind of just dive right in? And kind of second part to that question is, what's kind of the overall, strategy, going forward?
Okay. So I think that really what helped us, there's two things, and they came together. So the first is being part of a community. Like you can be a real estate investor on your own, but and you can do any new business on your own. But you're so much more likely to succeed when you're part of a community, right? And I know a lot of people don't necessarily have, they don't necessarily want to pay to be part of these investment communities, because that's what you essentially do have to do. You have to be pay, you have to pay to be part of them, or pay for the education. Sometimes, like, we dropped $20,000 on our membership, on our first membership, and we didn't tell anyone that we how much we spent, because it was like, I mean, what if we failed, right? That's a
Right.
lot of money to quote unquote waste. But that was essentially the driving force for us to succeed, because we're like, we spent $20,000. We have to succeed, right? We just have to. And um, so being part of the community is one of the things. It helped us to see other people do the amazing things that they're doing and be inspired by them and see ourselves in them. But it also gives you a support net. And that helps you be able to take those leaps, because we may not know all of the answers to the questions that people may have of us, or we may not know all of the strategies, or all of the creative things that you can do. But we are part of amazing groups, and everyone in like everyone in those groups has done something different, and we all learn from each other, and we're all very giving with advice. So community is the number one thing that I think that helped us get to where we needed to go. So if anyone out there wants to be part of a real estate investing community in Canada, let me ask me what like I'll send you a bunch of suggestions, because there's all kinds right now. But the second thing is a mindset shift. You really do have to have that switch that happens, that you can believe that you can do it, or you can believe that anything is possible. I have a friend that I'm so grateful to call her, like, literally one of my friends, but she's also like a mindset coach. And so she talks about, her name's Melanie Robinson, and she talks about how if you're going to make it up, which is what we all do, we make up things in our heads all the time. We tell a story. But if you're going to make it up in your head, if you're going to spend that energy, make it up good. So tell yourself that that call that you're going to have with a potential investor is going to go well. Like, don't worry about, or don't concern yourself with what might go wrong. Tell the story that it's going to happen in the positive light. And that right there, I think I still use that today to help me reframe certain situations. And it helps moving forward. And I honestly, like, I told it to Colin, my husband. I told him the day or the moment before we got on our very first call, where we raised enough money to buy our first apartment building.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was so worried. He's like, oh, he's gonna be upset or whatever. I don't even know what he was thinking. But I was like, look, if you're gonna make it up good. Like, this is gonna be a good call. And we looked at each other after the call, and we're like, oh my God, we just bought an apartment building, essentially. So
You nailed it.
yeah, we nailed it.
You're exactly right. And I would say that's kind of why, you are a successful entrepreneur, is because you're able to deal with some of those limiting beliefs. You're able to kind of get, push through what we've heard referred to as imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
Which is a real thing, right?
Yep.
And so, kudos to you for that. So, let's talk a little bit more about, being an entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur is a roller coaster, right?
Yes.
What are some pivotal moments in your growth journey that have shaped your approach to business and life?
Yes. So the roller coaster happens every day. Like, it's not just like over the year you have ups and downs. It's literally every single day you have ups and downs. When you own and manage that many properties, that is really the way it happens. And you have lots of deals on the go. You'll get a great news about one project that you have working on, and then an hour later you'll get something bad. And so you really do have to learn how to balance that in your head. And it is kind of like just taking it all with a grain of salt, right? Like that saying, but it is just taking it all in, and knowing that nothing is really like life or death. right? So you can't put too much energy on either of those two things. But one of the big shifts that I had was when I realized that we're not just real estate investors. This isn't just a side hustle. When you become a real estate investor, you actually do realize that I'm actually an entrepreneur. Like, I need to start thinking the way an entrepreneur thinks. And I realized I had never really had that. I didn't have really much exposure to that. Like raised traditionally, like you go to school, you get a normal job, you buy a house, like you retire on whatever retirement plan, right? And so I started actually just reading and listening to podcasts that had to do with that, so that I could understand that mindset. And that was very helpful. And looking to other people who are farther down the line, that was a very important thing. Another thing that you run into is comparisonitis, everybody calls that now, where you're constantly comparing yourself to other people, and social media that can make it really hard, right? Because you're looking at all the things that other people are doing. But I've learned that I try not to do the comparison thing. I really need to look at these people and see who are the ones that I want to emulate. And, you know, maybe you reach out to them. Like, Instagram is this kind of like playing field where you can actually DM somebody and maybe they'll respond. A lot of people do. Or you get into networks where or like people like that exist. And so I think that that's one way that I moved into that world of being an entrepreneur. And like my husband and I, we are still learning that. That's kind of the stage that we're at now, where we are, again, surrounding ourselves with people of that mindset, and then looking to the people that we want to emulate. And I mean, we decided to join yet another community that focuses on that. Like, it's a real estate investing community, but it's focusing on just growth, right? It's focusing on scale and building a business that's sustainable. And so all the people that we have on as, like expert speakers, they're the big names that I follow on Instagram.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's exciting. It's awesome.
Well, it's definitely evident that you continue to invest in yourselves, which is incredibly transformative when you think about the journey of an entrepreneur, and not forgetting the fact that you need to grow as well. Not just as an individual, but your mindset grows, your priorities shift over time. You want to continue to establish and create new connections with others in that community. So let's talk a little bit about working with a spouse. Okay. That can be very unique and dynamic. So how do you navigate the challenges and the joys of building a business together? And what advice maybe would you give to somebody else considering that path?
Honestly, for us, that's our goal, is to be able to work on real estate in our own business full time, the both of us. Right now, I'm the only one who's full time in this, but also, as you noticed, have small children. So kind of splitting my time between children and this, like all of the things. And then Colin, he still has a full-time job. And so that, again, he's splitting his time between full-time job and real estate investing. So we would love to be able to wake up every morning, send the kids to school, and have, our days where we can just work together. But that, of course, I mean, it comes with challenges. We've had conversations with other couples, and we've been very public. Like, Colin and I, we go to couples therapy. We have for a long time, and we bring some of the issues that we have to therapy. And I just don't see how. I feel like it's really hard. It puts so much more pressure on you as a couple if you're not, you know, having those outlets where you can really discuss, because for us, our attention is the time that we devote to work versus our kids. Like that's my world and that's my realm. And so I feel like I'm constantly pulling Colin over to this side. And I know for him, real estate, he is far more immersed in the day-to-day administrative and unfortunately like kind of task work of real estate.
Mhm.
And I know he wishes that I was more in that, but my day is very short. Like the hours that I get to devote to something is very short. And I know, because you work from home too, but the constant interruption makes it a little bit different or a little bit difficult. So, um, yeah, I mean, it's not easy. And but we are sort of like, forward focused on that day when we'll have a bit more time, to devote full time to this, that then we can, like both be each other's support.
Yeah.
And we hold, like, he's very good at holding that all of the stuff on his shoulders. Like I know that it's a lot. And then for me, I hold the kids stuff on my shoulders, and that's a lot too, like making sure everything's prepared and they're not getting into too much mess.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah. And it's great that also hear that, you guys are willing to seek the support and help of others. And sometimes in a relationship, it's just good to have, a third party that's just kind of willing to listen.
Yeah.
Sometimes just, verbalizing some of the challenges or struggles that you might, be having, in and of itself, is healing. So, Nicole, let's talk about authenticity. It's a buzzword, right?
Yeah, it
Um,
is.
but it's also a very powerful force. So how do you stay true to yourself in the business world that sometimes pushes for conformity?
I think authenticity is a buzzword right now, but I think it's because, um, the marketing world and media is kind of catching up with what we actually want as people. Like we're the people who consume media, we're the people who consume, the marketing. And I think that most people would just prefer somebody to tell it like it is.
Yeah.
Hey, politicians, listen up too. like, like we just want people just to tell it like it is. And so I do think there's a bit of catch up there where people are actually, or perhaps people in the marketing industry are actually listening and saying, hey, these clips on Instagram hit the hardest and like they go the farthest and they get the most views, and they're usually the most stripped down, like honest, raw, videos or whatever. And so that's one side of it. I think that I have a friend who's very into marketing, and she's been posting a lot about how, that is a buzzword. People are trying to do that a lot more. Um, but at the same time, social media, unfortunately, you see one side of things a lot as well. You get a lot of positive stories,
Yeah.
um and so for me, like, I like for us, we're just trying to really just tell our story. And the word that I, just try to stick to is integrity. And,
Mhm.
and so, when you are dealing with investors and you are dealing with other people, like other people's money, and like hard earned money, this is their savings. And right now we're in a period of time it's I mean, it's not as great as it was in 2020 and 2021. Interest rates have gone up so high and cash flows really, really shrunk.
Yeah.
And so not everybody's as excited as they were about an investment, they had 2 years ago. So you really have to deal with, sometimes you're dealing with upset people, right? Like, why isn't the investment performing the way that you said it was going to perform? And that, for people like Colin and I, like, that can be really hard because honestly, like, we really do just want to provide something good and something real, and help people create amazing futures and help people save for their, amazing retirements. And it can be hard when someone is hard on you. And what we're trying to just focus on is just like, are we in integrity? Like, are we in our integrity and our version of our best selves?
Yeah.
And as long as we are within our best selves, and I think that we can face those difficulties. If they come at us from other investors, or if they come, at you from someone online. That's how we remain authentic, I think, is just knowing what is our integrity.
Yeah. Yeah. Transparency definitely gets you a long ways. So,
Yeah.
let's talk about what's next on Coast to Coast as far as the next step for you guys, maybe the next bucket list item for you, personally or professionally.
Yeah. So for us, we are still working on basically getting Colin out of the weeds, like I said, of all the administrative task part of that. And we are, actively, we have a VA right now, which is amazing. So getting some of those tasks put off. And we are hiring an EA, which again is amazing. So that's task based, but it's also sort of like overall organization to just sort of like get us on track. And so, I mean, those are small things. I'm not talking about buying a bunch of buildings right now, but those are the important things that are going to be able to allow us to buy more buildings and to focus on growth and scalability, because we grew very quickly in the years 2021, 2022, right? And we had to pause our buying because there was just too much, right? Like we needed to create the systems to handle it all. And so that's one of the things that we're focusing on right now. But because of our experience, we're also focusing on knowing exactly what kind of building we want. So we're looking at newer buildings, like the 32 unit that we're buying. Monday is a brand new building. We're going to be building on the land that comes with the building. Continuing to build in Nova Scotia. We're going to be building a 12 unit here in Riverview, which is just outside of Moncton. And then we're doing some missing middle initiatives out in Victoria, BC. So a lot of brand new stuff because we like the newer stuff and land development.
Sure. Well, it's really exciting to hear all the different kind of irons you guys have in the fire. And it'll be interesting to kind of watch from the sidelines, what's going to happen in your guys's, growth journey in the next, several years. What would be maybe one or two different ways that our listening audience could connect with you to learn more about what you're up to?
So on Instagram, we are at Good Homes Canada. Our email address, you could just reach out to us at info@coasttocoasthomes.ca. And then our website, coasttocoasthomes.ca.
Well, that's great. Nicole, really have appreciated having you on the podcast episode today and kind of sharing, with us a little bit more about, mindset and how you got started and, kind of what you attribute, some of that early success to and where you're planning on going in the future. So it's been wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was awesome.
Great. And listening audience, thank you again for jumping into another episode of The Freedom Point. Look forward to having you join us on the next episode.
Thank you for hanging out with us today and for listening to the Freedom Point podcast, powered by Starting Point Capital. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on this show should be considered financial advice. Before making any financial decision, please consult with a professional. This show is copyrighted by the Freedom Point podcast. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting. If you're interested in connecting, you can find contact information at startingpointcapital.com.